Imagine walking into a room and knowing that when you speak, people stop what they are doing and listen. Not because you are the loudest person there, not because you are trying to prove something, but because your words carry weight. Most people never learn this. They talk too much, they explain too much, they apologize for their own opinions, they speak with doubt in their voice, and then they wonder why nobody takes them seriously. You don't need bigger words, you don't need to act like someone you're not. You need confidence, you need clarity. You need to stop speaking just to be heard and start speaking because you have something worth saying. Think about how often you have stayed quiet because you were afraid of what people might think. How many times did you change your words because you wanted approval? How many times did you have an idea, but someone else said it with confidence, and suddenly everyone listened to them? That ends now. Because the way you speak is not just about communication. It tells people how you see yourself. If you speak like your words don't matter, people will treat them that way. But when you speak with purpose, when you look people in the eye, when you stop rushing and say exactly what you mean, something changes. People feel your certainty. And today you're going to learn how to stop sounding like everyone else and start speaking in a way people actually remember. Most people talk, but very few know how to truly command attention. They think being heard means speaking louder, talking faster, or using big words. It doesn't. Real communication is different. When you have something important to say, people should feel that you mean every word. But most people speak while thinking about how they are being judged. They're worried about saying the wrong thing, sounding stupid, or making someone disagree with them. That fear changes their voice. They become uncertain. They add unnecessary words. They explain every little detail because they are looking for approval. Look around you. The person who talks the most isn't always the person people respect the most. Sometimes it's the person who says one simple sentence that makes everyone stop. Why? Because confidence creates attention. When you know what you believe, you don't need to fight for attention. You don't need to beg people to listen. You speak clearly, you stay calm, and you let your words stand on their own. Think about the people you naturally respect. They probably don't rush every sentence. They don't constantly interrupt others. They don't need to prove that they're intelligent. When they speak, there is purpose behind their words. That's the difference. Anyone can make noise. Anyone can fill a room with words. But commanding attention requires control. It requires knowing when to speak, what to say, and what not to say. So before you worry about becoming a better speaker, understand this. People don't listen to confidence because it's loud. They listen because it feels certain. Stop trying to sound impressive. The moment you start choosing words just to make people think you are smart, you lose the power of being understood. Real confidence doesn't need complicated language. It doesn't hide behind big words or long explanations. It speaks clearly because it knows exactly what it wants to say. Think about the people you trust the most. They probably don't use 10 words when 5 are enough. They don't turn a simple point into a long speech. They say what they mean and you understand them immediately. That's powerful communication. A lot of people are afraid of sounding simple. They think simple means weak. It doesn't. Simple means clear. And clarity is one of the strongest forms of confidence. If you want people to listen, stop worrying about impressing them and start focusing on connecting with them. Look at the person you're speaking to. Understand what they care about. Choose words they can feel, not just words they can hear. Instead of saying, I believe that perhaps we should consider making a possible change, say, we need to change this. Feel the difference. One sounds uncertain, the other sounds direct. But being direct doesn't mean being rude. You can speak firmly without disrespecting people. You can disagree without attacking them. You can have strong opinions without turning every conversation into a fight. The goal isn't to prove that you're the smartest person in the room. The goal is to make your message impossible to misunderstand. When you stop performing for people and start speaking honestly, your voice changes. You become calmer. Your words become cleaner. You stop chasing approval, and people begin to notice that you actually believe what you're saying. Your words become powerful when your belief in them is stronger than your fear. You can know exactly what you want to say, but if your voice is full of doubt, people will feel that doubt before they even understand your message. That is why confidence matters so much when you speak. It is not about pretending to be fearless. It is about speaking even when you feel nervous. Think about the last time you had something important to say but held yourself back. Maybe you wanted to share an idea, ask for something, disagree with someone, or simply tell someone how you felt. You had the words in your mind, but then your fear started talking. What if they laugh? What if they disagree? What if they think I'm wrong? So you changed your words, lowered your voice, or stayed silent. That's how fear controls communication. Confidence begins when you stop making other people's reactions responsible for your words. You cannot control whether everyone agrees with you. You cannot control whether everyone likes you. But you can control whether you speak honestly and clearly. When you believe in what you're saying, you don't need to rush. You don't need to keep explaining yourself. You can pause, you can breathe, you can look someone in the eyes and say what you mean. If your voice shakes a little, speak anyway. Courage isn't having no fear. Courage is refusing to let fear choose your words. The more you practice speaking with honesty, the stronger your belief becomes. Every time you say what you truly mean instead of what you think people want to hear, you build another layer of confidence inside yourself. People listen when you speak clearly, directly, and without seeking approval. Think about how different a conversation feels when someone is constantly checking your reaction. They say something, then look at your face. They make a point, then immediately say, but maybe I'm wrong. They give an opinion, then soften it because they are scared someone might disagree. You can feel the uncertainty in their words. You don't have to communicate like that. If you believe something, say it clearly. If you don't understand something, admit it. If you disagree, say why. You don't need to become aggressive. You don't need to dominate the room. You simply need to stop apologizing for having a voice. Approval is addictive. Once you start depending on it, you become afraid to speak honestly. You begin changing yourself depending on who is standing in front of you. With one person, you act confident. With another, you become quiet. With another, you agree with everything just to avoid conflict. That isn't confidence, that's fear wearing a polite face. Real confidence is being able to say what you mean while still respecting the person listening. Or you can say, I disagree with you without turning it into a personal attack. You can say, I don't know without feeling embarrassed. You can say, this is what I believe without needing everyone in the room to approve. And when you stop chasing approval, something powerful happens. Your speech becomes calmer. Your sentences become shorter. Your eyes become steadier. You stop filling every silence because you are no longer terrified of what people might think. You are simply speaking your truth clearly and without begging anyone to accept it. Stop filling every silence with unnecessary words. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to keep talking just because there is a quiet moment. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do in a conversation is stop. A lot of people are uncomfortable with silence. They feel like they need to say something immediately. So they repeat themselves, add extra details, tell stories that nobody asked for, or keep explaining a point that was already understood. They think more words mean more power, but often the opposite is true. When you know what you want to say it clearly and let it breathe. Imagine someone asks you a simple question. Why did you make that decision? You could spend 5 minutes defending yourself, listing every detail and trying to convince them that you're right. Or you could look at them and say, because I believed it was the right decision. Then stop. Let the silence exist. You don't need to rescue people from the silence. You don't need to immediately add another sentence because you're afraid they might judge you. Give your words space to land. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming intentional. Listen more carefully. Think before you respond. Remove the words that don't add value. Before you speak, ask yourself, does this need to be said? Does this make my message clearer? Am I saying this because it matters or because I'm nervous about being quiet? That small pause can completely change the way you communicate. You begin listening instead of waiting for your turn to talk. You notice people's reactions. You choose better words. And when you finally speak, your message has more weight because every sentence has a reason to be there. Strong communication starts with controlling yourself before trying to influence anyone else. You can know all the right words in the world, but if you cannot control your emotions, your tone, or your reactions, your message can fall apart in seconds. Think about what happens when someone challenges you. Maybe they interrupt you, disagree with you, or say something that hits a nerve. Your first instinct might be to react immediately. Your voice gets louder. Your words become faster. You stop listening because you're already preparing your next response. That's where you lose control. The strongest communicator in the room isn't always the person with the best argument. Sometimes it's the person who can stay calm when everyone else becomes emotional. Before you answer, pause. Take a breath. Listen to what was actually said instead of reacting to what you think they meant. That small moment gives you control over your response. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to answer every insult. You don't need to prove yourself every time someone questions you. Sometimes saying less is stronger. When you control yourself, your voice naturally becomes more powerful. You don't rush because you're not panicking. You don't shout because you don't need volume to create authority. You don't attack because you are confident enough to disagree without losing yourself. And this applies everywhere, at work, with friends, in relationships, and even during difficult conversations with strangers. If someone can control your emotions with a few words, they control the conversation. But when you can stay calm, think clearly, and choose your response instead of reacting automatically, you become much harder to shake. That kind of control doesn't come from pretending you don't care. It comes from caring enough about your message that you refuse to let a temporary emotion destroy it. Your voice should reflect the person you are becoming, not the person you are afraid to be. Too many people walk into conversations carrying an invisible fear of judgment. They change their opinions, copy the way others speak, and hide parts of their personality because they want to fit in. Slowly, they stop sounding like themselves. But people can feel when you're pretending. You don't need to copy the loudest person in the room. You don't need to use someone else's style, personality, or vocabulary to sound confident. Your strength comes from knowing who you are and being comfortable enough to let that person speak. Or think about the version of yourself you want to become. Maybe you want to be more disciplined, more confident, more respected, more honest. Start speaking like that person now. If you're becoming confident, stop saying, "I'm probably wrong," but every time you share an idea. If you're becoming decisive, stop turning every simple choice into a long explanation. If you're becoming stronger, stop allowing every opinion around you to change your direction. Your words should support your growth. That doesn't mean you should pretend to know everything. A strong person can say, "I don't know." A confident person can admit a mistake. A mature person can change their mind when they learn something new. Strength isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest with yourself. And when you speak from that place, you become more natural. You don't have to memorize clever lines. You don't have to force confidence into your voice. You simply speak with the certainty of someone who knows what they stand for. The goal isn't to become someone people are impressed by for 5 minutes. It's to become someone whose words feel real because they come from a person who is no longer afraid to be himself.